Hi, I'm Freezing Cold, and I'm here to explain how to beat 30 Days of Night, a vampire movie from 2007 that takes place in northern Alaska. I have always loved this movie because of the strangely beautiful cinematography of blood splattered on pristine white snow. But enough about my fetishes. Let's go over a quick plot summary so that everyone who hasn't seen the film will be totally caught up, and then we can outline the conditions of the scenario before jumping into the solutions. In the opening scene, some weirdo in a rowboat gets to shore from a large tanker on the horizon, and he walks to get a view of Barrow, Alaska, one of the most northern cities in the world. A large portion of the townsfolk are heading south for the winter, because in the winter months the sun doesn't rise there for a whole 30 days. You can probably see where this is going. The weirdo goes around town, getting up to no good, starting to make trouble in the neighborhood by killing sled dogs, destroying helicopters, disabling plows, and destroying satellite phones. Our main character, Eben, played by Josh Josh Hartnett, eventually catches the weirdo harassing a waitress and throws him in the city jail, which is a thing he can do because he's the sheriff. As the long night falls, people on the periphery of the town are beset by vampires. The power in the city goes out, so Eben drives to the power station to investigate. He finds the head of its occupant outside. Then his truck is attacked by a vampire, which he manages to shake off, but he returns to the town to find that the vampires have already descended on the city. He gathers survivors and hides in an attic for a few weeks, but eventually they start running out of supplies, so they head to the general store during a blizzard, hoping that it will keep them concealed from the vampires. Though it works, the whiteout ends before they can make it back to the attic, so instead they make a break for the Utilidor, a power and waste management station that still has its lights on. Along the way, Eben learns that the vampires are vulnerable to UV light. They make it to the Utilidor, but as the 30 days are nearly up, the vampires burst a nearby oil pipeline and set fire to the town, hoping to destroy any evidence of their presence there before they set out and leave on their ship. In a desperate last-ditch effort to save the few people left alive, Eben injects himself with vampire blood so that he'll become a vampire and be strong enough to fight them off. He manages to kill the vampire leader by punching him through the head, and the rest of the vampires don't want none of that, so they bail before the sun rises. The film ends with Eben sitting with his wife as he dies in the sunlight. 30 Days of Night is a strangely boring movie at times because a lot of screen time is taken up by characters arguing about what they should do instead of actually doing anything. But I love it, despite its flaws. Let's discuss exactly what the humans are up against. The vampires themselves arrive on a large ship that anchors just outside of town. It's difficult to tell exactly how many vampires there are, but we see about 9 confirmed vampire kills, and there are 9 at the end that flee, so let's say there's an even 20 or so. They can be killed with either sunlight, UV light, or by headshots, but they're extremely resistant to damage below the neck. It's not impossible to kill them through other means, like, say, if you had a garbage shredder, or an industrial-sized mobile chainsaw. The vampires are much stronger than humans and much faster. They speak and understand English, though they prefer to speak their own language, and obviously they're intelligent. For example, at one point they let a girl walk through the streets calling for help, in the hopes of using her as bait for other humans that might come to her aid. And at the end of the film, they burn the city down to make the whole thing look like some twisted accident instead of a vampire attack. As for the humans, there are 152 people in the city at the beginning of the film, but only 5 make it to see sunrise. 6 if you count Eben, which I don't, because he was a vampire at that point. Originally, there were 563 people that live in Barrow, so only 37% of the population elected to stay during the 30 Days of Night. The people, being Alaskans, are all pretty much armed to the teeth, so firepower isn't an issue. This big guy even has a box of dynamite. They have a working plow, a working whatever the hell this is, and several vehicles. Despite the vampires cutting power to the town, many buildings have backup generators and ample fuel to keep them running. There's enough food and water to keep everyone alive for the 30 days, if they can get to it. They don't have any working planes or helicopters, so they can't fly out. And they also don't have any ways to call for help, since the vampires' helpers stole and burned all their satellite phones. The town of Barrow itself is, as previously stated, one of the most northern cities in North America. To the west and the north is the Pacific Ocean, and inland is dotted with thousands of lakes. During the warmer months, the only way to access access Barrow is by plane, but in the winter it is technically possible to drive along the sea ice to the nearest road access to the east, in Prudhoe Bay, which is 160 miles away. Interestingly, in 2016, Barrow was renamed to Utqiagvik. Hi, I'm a detective, see? And I've been trying to solve a cold case from the 30s. The body of a famous actress dame was discovered at a local theater, and it seems like the board of directors, those ugly mugs, wants to keep it under wraps. Okay, I'm not really a detective, but I got as close to being one as I could by playing Hunt a Killer, an interactive game where you try to solve a cold case by looking at the evidence, finding clues, and eliminating suspects until you find your killer. Each month you're sent a collection of evidence and clues, and it's up to you to piece together the mystery and solve the case. If you like escape rooms, true crime, or murder mysteries, you will absolutely love Hunt a Killer. It's a game that can be enjoyed alone or with friends and family. Hunt a Killer's stories are overseen by John E. Douglas, a retired FBI agent who's infamous for interviewing and constructing psychological profiles for serial killers, including Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, and Edmund Kemper, so you know that Hunt a Killer is going to be an authentic experience. If this sounds like something you or your friends and family would enjoy, please go to huntakiller.com/filmherald and use the code FILMHERALD for 20% off your first box. Again, make sure to use the code FILMHERALD for a 20% discount. So, let's talk solutions. What the main characters did for the most part was hide. But when I think of a town of Alaskans, all armed with guns designed to fend off polar bears, a different solution springs to mind. There are 152 humans, which means there are 304 hands that could be holding guns. There are only 20 or so vampires. Just murk the fuckers, am I right? Can I get a yeehaw? Eben's sheriff vehicle is equipped with a loudspeaker, so all he needs to do is drive around the town and tell everyone to gather at either the general store or the diner and bring as many guns and as much ammunition as possible. There is strength in numbers. If they want to get really creative, they can even use these UV lights for defense, or use the oil from the pipeline to make flaming moats around buildings. With so many people and so many guns in one place, the humans will have so much firepower that they'll turn the vampires into Swiss cheese before they can get close. Seems like a good plan to me. Well, the largest advantage the vampires have is the element of surprise. When Eben goes to investigate why the power is out and only finds a head, he returns and tells everyone not to group up, but rather split up and stay indoors and stay armed. He tells everyone to do exactly the opposite of what they should be doing, because at this point in the film, he just doesn't really know what the threat is. All he knows is that someone has been brutally murdered. By the time he does figure out that it's a group of vampires, they're already in the city, and there's no easy way to organize everyone to fight back after the vampires have taken control of the streets. So while this solution is technically the best because it almost certainly would have saved the most lives, it has a fatal flaw, and that's information. Eben and the rest of the town don't know what's happening before the vampires get into the city. It's possible that Eben could have put the warning signs together. Sled dogs have been killed, helicopters have been sabotaged, phones have been destroyed, and realized that they're about to be under attack. But that is the only way he could have put the solution into action soon enough for it to be effective. Instead of fighting back, Eben and co could attempt to escape. For some reason, it never occurs to the main characters to just leave. They have functioning vehicles, they even have a plow, and it's the right time of year for them to chance the sea ice and drive to Prudhoe Bay. The storm would be the best chance to do so because they would have cover and could possibly leave without being seen. In 2018, a group of guys made the sea ice crossing in jeeps and pickup trucks. It only took them 4 days to make the 160-mile crossing. If Eben and the others made the journey relatively early into the 30 days of night, they could get to Prudhoe Bay and call for help for the remaining townspeople. The military could fly into the town, for example. This strategy could save many more lives than what's seen in the film if reinforcements are called in to fight back against the vampires. The only problem they might encounter is if the vampires follow them when they leave Barrow. The film shows multiple examples of vampires being able to catch up to moving vehicles, so if the vampires noticed them leaving town, they wouldn't be able to escape. Some kind of sacrificial distraction might be necessary, so that one or more vehicles can get away unnoticed onto the sea ice. But my favorite solution of all is to just steal the vampires' boat. They've got this giant boat parked just outside of town, and the opening shot shows that one need only step over the ridgeline to see where it is. But for some reason, no one notices it. I mean, look at the size of that thing. You'd think that someone would have noticed. It wouldn't take that much brain power to wonder exactly where these vampires came from. Eben could even try to extract the information out of the vampire's helper, or just scout around the town for a ship, which is the most logical way the vampires could have gotten there. If they're able to take the ship, then they would leave the vampires stranded in Barrow. If the ship has a radio or satellite phone, they could call for help immediately and save the remaining humans. However, the solution has the same problem as escaping on the sea ice. If they can get to the rowboat, they're home free, but getting there alive will be the hard part. Again, some type of distraction may be necessary. The nice part, however, is that the journey to safety will be much quicker than 4 days, and theoretically, Eben could bring as many people as possible. Stealing the vampire's boat is by far my favorite solution for beating 30 Days of Night. I don't know if it's the best solution, but it's certainly the funniest. But if you have a better idea on how to beat the vampires from 30 Days of Night, please let me know about it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this has been the Film Herald.